Welcome home, racing fans. Well, first, I'd like to wish everyone the very best. I hope you guys are all healthy and happy, safe, and you stay that way. We're going to talk about one of the latest releases from Racer Sideways, and that is the Nissan Skyline Turbo Group 5, a very highly anticipated car. A lot of people have been talking about it. And, well, you're either a fan of this car or you're not. Some people think it's ugly. Some people love it. It just depends. You know, it's an early 80s car. It was an icon back then. So if you identify with it, well, you're going to love this car. On the outside, I think they've done a pretty good job. Paint and markings look really good. Nothing is ever perfect. You know, nothing's perfect in our hobby, but I think they've done a pretty good job. You know, on the underside, everything looks to be the same. We have our angle winder pod system, just like the other cars have. Happy to see that, so I don't see any major changes. One thing you do need to be aware of when you get the car is that this wing will not be installed on the car when you take it out of the box. You will have to take it and press it down. I'm going to show you some close-up photos of that. So this will be underneath the case. You're going to have to take it out and press it in. I did not use any glue here at all. I just pressed it in and pressure. So on the outside, like I said, I think they've done a really good job. I mean, markings crisp and clean, like I said. Just an attractive car, and I think it's going to go perfectly with this series. I'm really a fan of the series, so I'm glad to see another choice in our hobby. So anyway, we're going to get started. We're going to look at the inside real quick. You know, we're going to do our tires and our road test. But so far, well done sideways. I think it looks pretty good. Okay, we're going to talk about the front end. Some have had some questions about it. We've covered it before. But yes, there are set screws at the top on each side at the front axle. And if you flip it over, there's some at the bottom that allow you to fine-tune the ride height of this front axle and suit it to your track. Pretty easy. All right, as far as the rest of the car is concerned underneath, there are no major changes. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Compatibility with the other Group 5 cars. And I believe we have that here. We have the same flat 6 motor, same gear ratio. All these components are the same. The pod is the same. And of course, you know, we do have the bar magnet right here. We don't use it here, but it is in place. And we already discussed the front end adjustability of the axles. So this car is going to run, you know, pretty much like all the rest of them, depending on your setup and driving style. I'm sure it'll be competitive. And that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to take these tires off. We're going to put some quick slicks on here, do a tire change, and a road test. But I'm happy to see there's no major changes and we keep our compatibility. Okay, time to talk about tires. I use two types of tires down here. That's Paul gauge urethanes for those that like urethane, and I use quick slicks for my silicone. Now for this car, I'm choosing the CB58. It's a little bit different size and sometimes is listed, but that's because it's wider, and this tire is about the closest match for the stock tire. You're talking about 20.50. That's real close to the stock tire size, so that's the one that I'm going to use. And with the ground clearance of this car, I'm really not going to reduce that down. I'm just going to keep it the way it is. Now the Paul gauge tire on this side is actually a little bit larger. It's close to like 21.25, but that's because they're designed to be sanded. So when I install my urethanes on here, I do that knowing that I'm going to take them over to the tire truer and I'm going to true them down and reduce the diameter in size. So it's really hard to add to that tire, but easy to take away. So that's why I start with the larger 2012 5. Anyway, we're going to use the quick slicks. We're going to use the firm compound over here. I already have it installed. Like you see, it looks really good. The width is almost identical to stock. Got plenty of clearance, and that's our choice. So now we'll get this buttoned up and let's just see what it does. One final thing I'd like to discuss, since it has been brought up here recently, is when you purchase a car like this, this is a competition grade car. It's going to need just a little bit of attention before you want to start racing it. The first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to lubricate the car. So I just use a good oil like here from Slot Car Corner, and a very light drop here and here, very small on each end of the motor. And I also put a little bit right here underneath here, because these set screws, it just you'd be amazed how quiet it gets just with a little bit of oil right there. Not a lot, just a little bit. So lubrication is important. And on the gears as well, I use a synthetic grease, just a light coat of grease right here. And then the other thing you want to do is you want to double check your set screws. These wheels with the set screws here, and I got these things set so you can see both. So you want to go through your set screws using the wrench provided. If you're new, if this is your first time, there is a wrench underneath the case. You can always order a better one later, but it'll get you through for your first time. So you're going to want to check these set screws and make sure they're tight. Make sure you know that they're not loose on the gear and on the wheels. And then you're going to check your side to side free play to make sure you don't have a whole lot. You'll notice that this axle collar right here, that's easy to adjust. You don't want it too tight, but you don't want it too loose. So go through and check your set screws, make sure everything's tight, make sure everything's well lubricated, then you're ready to start playing. Okay, one final thing we're going to cover before the road test, and that is the pod system. If you're new to these cars, you're going to want this pod right here. You want this to be a little bit loose. You don't want it too tight. So just using a regular Phillips, you can loosen up these screws just a little bit, maybe a turn and a half as you go, and you just want a little bit. Now, there's all sorts of different setups. People put tape down here. They get rid of these screws altogether. They change things. This thing is designed to be changed, but for out of the box, all I've done is loosen it up just to give that a little bit of float. And now we're going to get our road test done. Well, I have to say that's pretty respectable time for a car that usually gets a lot more treatment than that. Like I said, we have some lead that we might add, some other adjustments to make, but out of the box, that best lap of 3.515, that's pretty good. A lot of my cars are in the 3.4 range, but again, I've tuned on them a lot. So this thing fits right into the series. I think all of you are going to be very pleased with the performance. I'd like to hear your feedback on that, but in the 3.5 range, that's really good for basically out of the box. So at the end of the day, I have to give a thumbs up to Sideways. They've made a great car, highly anticipated, like I said, from a lot of people. It fits right in this series, and that's exactly what we wanted as another choice. However, to be objective, I'm going to tell you this right now. This wing and these mirrors are very fragile. And if you can just tell, I had one accident here earlier during testing and broke that right off. Very fragile. I can see these and these mirrors having a very short lifespan for some racers out there, including myself. So I glued it back in place using some UV glue. Seems to be okay, but I have to say, hope there's a lot of spares out there for these, because I don't see them lasting. Or you just don't race it with it, and then it just doesn't look right. I know that's an option, but most people don't. So I will say that overall the car runs great. It's a great competitor, fits in the series. These are just parts that are just, they're not going to hold up to hard racing, and you need to know that. But anyway, I still have to give them a thumbs up. It's great to see this new car. I'm glad a lot of you guys have finally got your car that you've been asking for. So here it is. And as always, love to hear you guys' feedback on the forum, Facebook, YouTube. So just let us know what you think when you get yours in.